Good afternoon, everyone. Super excited to be here talking about one of my favorite topics, which is microlearning. We're going to talk about the customer journey from onboarding to advocacy, really focused on small teams, maybe teams who are wearing multiple hats, something that many of you I'm sure can relate to, and how they can get started really quickly with microlearning having a big impact using AI. Before we jump in, just a little bit more about me. I am Constance James. I'm the Senior Manager of Customer Education for HubSpot Academy. I've been a customer education professional for over 10 years now. I've started academies and universities at companies like SalesLoft, at eVestment, focusing a little bit on institutional intelligence at NASDAQ. And now super happy to be at HubSpot Academy, leading customer education efforts there. If any of you are familiar with HubSpot Academy, you may know us for our certification program, and that is a really important part of what we do for our customers. But my big focus and my big passion right now with HubSpot Academy is microlearning and really getting into bite-sized edutainment, short-form content that has a big impact throughout the customer journey. And so that's what we're going to spend our time talking about today. And what I would like to do is introduce you all to a 4x4 framework that we'll use. So we'll take a look at 4 areas of the customer journey. We talked a little about onboarding, we talked a little about advocacy, we'll talk about 2 in between, and we'll look at 4 different ways that AI can be utilized to really have an impact across those areas of the customer journey with few resources, with little time, but with a lot to do. All right, so let's jump into it. First, let's talk a little bit about the customer journey that we'll be taking a look at today. We'll start by talking about onboarding. Of course, as customer educational professionals, we spend a lot of time thinking about onboarding, right? That first time to value. How do we get our customers in and quickly realizing the value for why they purchased our software or services in the first place? Then we'll go into adopting. Once they've moved past onboarding, now they're in the adopting phase. How do we make the usage of our software a daily task, a part of their usual workflows, and really build those habits in using our software? Once customers adopt, ideally they retain and they expand. So how do we get them to upsell? How do we cross-sell? How do we get them more seats? How do we unlock premium features for those customers? And how can education play a role in getting accounts to retain and upsell and cross-sell on features? And then finally, our most important sales force are our customers. So how do you turn those promoters who are having a delightful experience, who are getting a lot of value out of your software, how do you turn them into advocates? And how can education play a role in empowering them to be advocates, evangelizing your product and software and services, and getting them out to other people in the ecosystem? So that's the journey that we'll look at today. Still working on the clicker. And the 4 steps that we'll look at, again, using AI to help power this, is detecting. First of all, the analysis. We want to make data-driven decisions. We want to use analytical insights in order to make good decisions. But analyzing data takes a lot of time. You probably have data in a lot of different places, in your CRM, maybe in your LMS, in your support system. You have sales data, all sorts of data all over the place. And it can take a lot of time to really think about what do you bring together to draw the right insights out. And so we'll spend a little bit of time talking about how you can use AI to drive those data-driven insights for you instead. Then we'll talk about designing. All microlearning needs a design, whether you're building short-form video, whether you're building case studies, micro quizzes. How can you use AI to help bring more scale and efficiency to the design process for the various assets that you're building for your customers throughout the journey? Personalizing. So we can build one asset to rule them all, but what customers are increasingly looking for in 2025 is personalization. So how can you speak more deeply to those personas, to the actual usage of those accounts, and use AI to really help scale the personalization of your efforts across your customer journey? And then finally, scaling. Once we start, we need to grow the reach and grow the impact of these programs. And so what are some of the tools and some of the tips and the tricks that we can pull out in order to scale our efforts across the journey? Let's go back. Go back. All right, before we get into it, let's address the robot in the room. I am going to be talking a lot about AI. This whole session is about AI, and I appreciate that we are probably all on different levels of the adoption curve with regard to AI. Some of you may already be using AI very regularly in your customer education programs. Some of you may be thinking about using AI but not quite sure where to get started. Some of you may be very hesitant to introduce AI into your customer journey, and all of those are okay places to be. I think there are some considerations that are valuable across the board, so let's talk a little bit about that. The first one is your brand voice. We want to make sure that we're protecting the brand that our customers, our advocates, our promoters know us for. And so you'll really want to take some time before you get started with AI. If you don't already have things like style guides, like brand guides, you want to take some time to build those out. And whatever AI tools you're using, you want to make sure that you're training those tools on what your brand voice is. So you're protecting those styles. And it's not just about visual design. Of course, that's an important component of it, but it's also about your voice. What feels authentic for your brand and feels authentic to your customers. The other thing is human QA checkpoints. While we know that AI can help us scale, we also know that customers only trust AI, about 83% of them only trust AI if they know that a human is also involved. This is another way that you're gonna make sure that you're both protecting your brand, but you're also meeting your customer needs. You're not leaning too heavily on the scale of AI and removing that human authentic factor. So what points in the process do you need to inject a human? What should they be looking for? And what are some things that you wanna keep all in the hands of your customer education team without using AI at this stage? Of course, another really important point is data privacy and personal information, especially we're gonna start off talking about the detect stage and using AI to do some analysis for us. You wanna protect your customers' data. So especially if you're at a company that doesn't have enterprise licenses for AI tools, they have not already sort of brokered what that data privacy looks like, you'll wanna make sure that you're having conversations at the executive level to determine what of our customer data do we feel comfortable sharing with AI? How do we protect their personal identifying information when we're using AI for data analysis? And how are we being transparent with our customers about the use of their data to build our programs? Which leads me to the final point, transparency. Transparency is key. Going back to that stat that I shared a little earlier, customers are okay, especially in the microlearning space with AI helping to scale, but they want to know that you've used it. So really thinking about how do you be transparent with your customers in your use of AI? What taglines might you include? What other information might you give them? So they're aware how and when you've used AI, and of course, how and when you will not use AI to serve them. All right. Let's dive in. Let's get started. First, to anchor us all to an example, I want you, of course, to keep your own companies in mind, keep your own customer education teams in mind, but we're gonna pretend just for the next 45 minutes or so that we all work for one company, and we're all working together to get that customer education stood up, and we work for a company called SalesNest. This is a pipeline and sales enablement software. It's in the startup stage. We're just past Series B. We got just over 100 employees. We have a lot to do as a very small customer education team. There's one lead, there's one instructional designer, and every so often we get some help from a support person who has a little bit of content background. And we don't have a lot to work with. We do have some live and pre-recorded webinars. We do have a support knowledge base, but right now that's it. We have a lot of hats to wear in making sure that we can onboard our customers very quickly, that we can move them through adoption, that we retain their revenue and hopefully grow their revenue, and that we turn them into advocates with this very small team. All right, so we're all going to be working for SalesNest, and as with any customer journey, our customers are facing some problems. In our onboarding stage, our salespeople, if you work with salespeople already, you know time is money, and they don't want to take 60 minutes to join our onboarding sessions. They don't want to take 60 minutes to watch the recording. So they're often skipping the education that we currently have to get them onboarded quickly. We're also seeing some issues with adoption. Less than a third of our customers are using our most impactful tools in our software. So even when they get past onboarding, they're not really adopting the tools that are most helpful and impactful for the reason why they purchased our software. Our expansion is lower than we see, so only 18% of our current customers are upgrading to the next level, moving from that professional to enterprise or from that starter to professional sort of tiers. And while we do have advocates, we have a healthy NPS of 46, we don't have a ton of renewals. People are letting us know that they're delighted, but they're not telling that to anyone else. And so we have some opportunities to really impact the customer journey across the board here. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to dive into detection. How can we leverage AI to detect the key friction points across the customer journey to give us those insights and those analytics to make data-driven decisions for the rest of the things that we're going to do? Again, as we know, data analysis is key, but it's also time-consuming. It can be a little tricky, and so AI can play a really big role here in helping us understand the friction points that our customers are experiencing by leveraging the information that we already have about our customers. So we're going to start off with onboarding. One thing that I really recommend in the onboarding stage is taking your support tickets from customers who are in their first 90 days and using a generative AI tool like Claude to analyze what friction points are common, what things are regularly happening. When people are coming in and they're logging tickets in that onboarding phase, why is that happening? What roadblocks are they running into? And this is an example we're going to dive into a little bit more in just a bit. With regard to adoption, another thing that you may want to do is think about how you can take your product usage logs from your product tool. Maybe that's something like Pendo. I've heard that name tossed around a little bit. Maybe you have a native tool with your software, and create a heat map. Ask a generative AI tool to give you a heat map on where people are adopting features post 90 days and where are they falling short. Where in the funnel are they not having those aha moments? And that's going to give you some insights into what sort of additional campaigns or drips or lessons you might want to be building for your academy to really drive the right product adoption. And then expanding. Think about how you can correlate what add-on features have the highest ROI for your customers. And think about how that can then drive your decisions and what sort of advanced modules you want to create. So for example, you have customers who are using regularly, you examine your customers who do go on to upgrade. You can use that information to really determine the learning outcomes and objectives of those advanced lessons that are then nudged to customers who are just ready for an upgrade, but perhaps don't understand what additional ROI they may be able to unlock by doing so. Education can really stand in the gap there. And then finally, advocating. What are your promoters saying in your NPS? What are your satisfied customers saying in your CSAT? If you have a customer effort score, what are those customers who find your process to be really easy? What do they find easy about it? You can use AI to really create a very seamless sentiment analysis to not only identify who are your customers who are most likely to be promoters and who may be primed to start creating some customer-generated content for you, but also to understand what parts of the customer journey you really want to double down on that's creating that delightful experience. Let's dive in a little bit more to the onboarding stage for this example, though. So we're going to talk about how you might go about analyzing those support tickets. So again, our goal here is to take that volume of tickets that we have and really uncover what are the friction points that are driving those tickets. So what we'll do is first, let's download a CSV from whatever your support tool is. Maybe that's Zendesk, maybe you're using Service Hub with HubSpot. Whatever your support tool is, you want to download a CSV, filter that CSV, of course, by customers who are within those first 90 days so that we can really isolate what's happening in the onboarding experience and what's driving volume to the support. Then you want to use a tool like ChatGPT, you can use Claude, you can use Gemini. Any of these would be really great tools to upload that CSV. Of course, keeping in mind personal identifying information and how your company is going to handle the data privacy of your customers. But you want to upload that CSV, and then you want to give it a prompt, something like this. Spoiler alert, I will give you a QR code that will have all of these prompts and many, many more prompts at the end. So don't feel like you need to write this down verbatim. We'll just talk through it at a high level while I have you now. But you want to ask the AI tool to, first of all, cluster these tickets by their theme and by their impact. So if you're able to download the volume of those tickets that are happening, you're able to extract how long it takes to resolve those sorts of tickets, you can then identify what themes are coming up in those first 90 days and what impact that's having to your support team. How much volume is it driving? How much time does it take to resolve? How often are people in that critical first 90 days just sort of standing still? And then what you're going to ask it to do is recommend to you a micro onboarding program. So how can we get ahead of the friction points that customers are often experiencing by aligning a micro onboarding program to what those friction points might be. Give me 5 steps. Or if you have a really complex product, maybe it takes you 10 steps. If you have a very simple point solution, maybe you only need 2 steps. But define what that cadence should look like and ask it to give you some really punchy, actionable micro-learning suggestions for an onboarding campaign that you can then drip directly to their inbox. Welcome to Sales Nest, for example. The first thing we want you to do is go ahead and connect your email address. And so what that will look like is you're going to take this raw 90-day support ticket data, which not very actionable, right? If we're looking at that spreadsheet, if you're a customer education professional, there's not a lot that you can draw out of just looking at that that's going to get you from only having webinars in a knowledge base to having an actual micro onboarding program. And what you'll get in return, 45 or 60 seconds or so later, is that micro onboarding campaign. We identified with Sales Nest, for example, that the #1 driver of tickets was connecting the CRM. People didn't understand how to do it. They went straight to the support team to do it. And so instead, we're going to have a micro lesson that goes right to their inbox that helps them connect their CRM in 3 clicks the very first day they sign up. And a few days later, we're going to help them do some call coaching. And a few days after that, finally, we'll help them understand their pipeline dashboard. And this is all based on the clustering and the impact of the support tickets that you generated. I should have said this at the beginning. There will be time for questions at the end, but I would love to break up the monotony of my own voice. So if you have questions at any point, get my attention, and let's talk about them as we go along. All right, let's talk about the next stage, which is design. So now that you've done some data-driven analysis using AI tools across all of those stages, we just took a look at onboarding for this example. Now you want to think about how can AI really help you design that micro-learning with a lot of scale and efficiency. Remember, in this instance, we're talking about a team that has 1 manager, 1 instructional designer, and every so often a support person can jump in and help. So they really could use some AI tools that are going to help scale their efforts. And again, we can do that across the entire customer journey stage. For example, you can use ChatGPT to really help you create a startup guide for the onboarding phase. While you're in the adopting phase, you could use a tool like 11 Labs or HeyGen to actually go ahead and create that short form video for you. And that's an example we'll take a closer look at in just a moment. When we're thinking about expanding, you may want to use an LLM to prompt an LLM with your usage ARR to create an ROI micro deck for customers who don't quite understand what they're going to get by upgrading to another level. And we'll talk a little bit about that example in just a moment as well. And then finally, advocating again by running that sentiment analysis. You can identify your power users. You can create some templates for them to make it really easy for them to go from being a promoter to actually talking about their experience on social media or G2 or LinkedIn. Let's take a little bit of time now, though, to talk about adoption, really critical phase, and how we can leverage some of these tools to build short-form video for people who are in the adoption stage of their journey. So as we recall, this is a company, like most of our companies, that does have a knowledge base. So they have static articles that walk them through the how-tos to use their tools. Not very dynamic. They're helpful in a pinch. You often don't want to push a knowledge base to a customer, and it doesn't actually show them the steps by steps and clicks in the tool itself, but you probably also don't have a ton of time to generate hundreds of how-to videos to start building your library. And so this is where AI can have a really big impact. By using a tool like Claude, again, or Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever your favorite generative AI LLM tool is, in conjunction with a tool like HeyGen or 11 Labs, which allows you to build videos without actually having to speak or even show up on screen yourself. You can take those knowledge base articles, turn them into scripts, turn those scripts into videos, and get those published in a fraction of the time. So what we'll be doing in this instance, we're going to start with our knowledge base articles. You can download your knowledge base articles. You can copy and paste them if that is what your tool allows. And you're going to upload those to ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, again, with your brand guidelines. So if you already have style guides, especially for video, you want to upload those in conjunction. If you don't, this is a time to pause interject some human QAing and really think about what is the authentic voice that should show up in your videos so that when they are generating these scripts, they're doing so with those guidelines in mind. So once you have your knowledge-based articles and you have your brand guidelines into ChatGPT, or I'm a big fan of Claude for this personally, you're going to ask it to create some scripts. Give me a script that is 2 minutes or less that really hones in on the aha moment we want customers to have and then walks them through this step-by-step direction for this particular task that we want them to achieve in the adoption phase. And then once you have those scripts, you can upload them to a tool like 11 Labs. If you want to go humans off screen and just show your feature, or your screen or your product or your features, then 11 Labs is a really great tool. If you are comfortable taking it a step further and really thinking about your education avatar, you can use a tool like HeyGen to generate an Academy avatar that represents your educational team and your brand, who will then speak to that script again without requiring any camera setup or audio setup by the actual people on your team. And these are things that you can do in batches of dozens at a time. So in one day, you can take your top 50 knowledge-based articles and turn those into 2 to 3 minute short form videos using HeyGen or 11 Labs. Both of those tools, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment as well, allow you to localize. So if you're serving customers in multiple countries who speak different languages, but your team has not yet caught up to the various countries that you're serving, you can use 11 Labs or HeyGen to localize those videos and provide that more personalized support in the language that your customers prefer. And so what does that look like? You go from a knowledge base that has helpful but a little static, a little black and white help articles to dynamic, impactful, actionable, and engaging short form video, again, without having to do any video editing, video recording, or audio recording yourself. All right, let's talk about personalization. So far we've stood a few things up, right? We have identified where in the customer journey customer education can really make an impact by analyzing some of our customer data like support tickets, like NPS, like close rates. We've also created some very general short form video. So we've taken some of the assets that we already have, like our knowledge base, and turned that to impactful micro-learning moments. But again, what our customers are really looking for is personalization. I want you to speak as nearly to me as you possibly can. If I am a sales rep, I want content that's just for SDRs, which will be very different than content that's for closers or people who are sales managers. And so how can we use AI to understand those moments of personalization and then drive as much personalization as possible with the amount of resources that we already have? So again, we're going to talk about all 4 stages and some of the things that you might do at each of those stages. First, in onboarding. So we've started with that sort of drag and drop. Here are the 5 general moments where people are getting caught up, and we have a general sort of onboarding. But if we were to go back to that original prompt that we used in the onboarding stage, we could also ask it to analyze for personas. Use the customer data that we have. Also think about the questions that they're asking and how they're talking about themselves to identify what personas are asking which questions, and then further driving personalization by having persona-based onboarding instead. With regard to adoption, we can take some of that longer form content that we've currently built out, like those webinars or the pre-recorded webinars that we have, and really think about how we might pull those apart into shorter form video and also stitch them together with other forms of content. So generate a quiz, for example, that helps answer some questions about this particular piece of content. With expanding, we're going to talk a little bit more now about that ROI deck. So rather than going to our customers and saying, hey, you should upgrade, because of course you should, they really want to understand, how does upgrading help me achieve the goals that I purchased this software for in the first place? So if we were able to extract that information to a spreadsheet, we could then use that information to generate highly personalized ROI decks that talk specifically to those customers by name, with their logos and with their goals included. And we'll share a little bit more about that example in a moment. And then again, with advocating, really thinking about how we can drive 60-second success videos, taking some of that information that our customers are giving us in NPS or in G2 Crowd, and rather than asking them to do anything, we could take the promotion that they've given us, we could turn it into a quick 60-second video, and then we can just ask for their permission to share that story in that format. Let's talk a little bit more about expanding. So again, we have customers who are using, who are retaining, but they're not growing to the next level. They're not unlocking that premium tier of features that really would help them achieve their goals, in this case, close more deals. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to use education about our software to reach out to them in a highly personalized way to give them information on how our tools will help them in particular. And so the way that we could do that is, first, we're going to start again with this raw, unstructured data in a CSV format. These are things that we probably all already have. We know who our customers are. We can very easily extract their logos. We have information about their usage data. And from those close won deals, we know why they purchased our software in the first place. The next thing we're going to do is use Canva Bulk Create to create a template of a 2-slide ROI deck that gives us the ability to slot in their name, slot in their logo, let them know that they're already achieving so much value from these features. And if they were to unlock this additional feature, they would have this additional ROI. We can go even further by building out a really customized ROI calculator using the information that we have about how many seats they have, the total size of their account, and so on and so forth. So what this will look like is, once you have that CSV of unstructured data, and these are new tools from Canva, which is doing a lot of really cool things for customer education professionals, in my opinion, with AI. You're going to go to Canva Sheets, and you'll upload that CSV into the Canva Sheets tool. The next thing you want to do using your branded material is create that template 2-slide deck. And in that deck, you're going to save a spot. Where does their name go? Where does the features that they're currently using go? What are some of the other things that you want to put back in front of them in a really personalized way? And then you just need to simply attach the columns in your CSV to those placeholders in the deck, and it'll generate as many decks as you need very quickly without you having to personalize each one of them. And so what that'll look like is going from this really unstructured customer data where you know people are primed for upgrading, but you can't scale the reason why, and you can't get that education on what additional features they may need in front of them quickly, to a deck that says their name, lets them know what they're going to unlock, and gives them information about that personalized ROI calculator included. So by the end of the day, all of your customers rather, who are ready and primed for cross-sell or upsell can receive in their inbox that highly customized deck that speaks specifically to them. Not their persona, not their general vertical, but specifically to them based on the data that you already have. All right, finally, let's talk about scaling. So once we have some things going, of course, our goal is to take them to the next level. We want to extend their reach and extend their impact. We want to scale the efforts of the customer education team across the journey. And so there's a number of ways that you can do that. In this instance, though, we're really going to take a look at focusing on what are the assets that we have and how can we use AI to take them to the next level. Now that we feel more comfortable as a company, we have more parameters and understanding of how we're going to use AI in our customer journey strategy. How do we take them to the next level? So one thing that you can do is use tools like Canva, Magic again, other generative AI tools like HeyGen, ChatGPT, and others to do a content remix. And a content remix is going to help you speak to your adult learners in the formats that they prefer. Up until this point, we have some knowledge-based articles and we have some short-form video. We don't have any infographics, we don't have a ton of guides, we don't have other formats, but by using those tools, you can create some templates that say, when I give you a short-form video, I want you to give me back an infographic in this style. I want you to give me back suggestions for a longer lesson in this particular style and other various formats. So we're starting to diversify how we're educating our customers and increasing the accessibility of how we're educating our customers. And then with regard to adoption, we talked a little bit about this example, but again, taking the content that we currently have and thinking about how we might break it up into shorter form content and really deliver on a personalized journey orchestration. So once people get past that onboarding phase, depending on who they are and what tools they're already using, we want to deliver them a highly personalized, highly adaptive way of continuing them along their journey throughout adoption. And so we can use AI, first of all, to give us some suggestions on the various permutations of what those journeys ought to look like, and then think about how we may take all of the various formats that we've recently remixed and package them up into essentially personalized micro lessons for customers. Again, thinking about expanding. So we've spent a little bit of time, oh, I see a hand, yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I just was wondering, as far as that adopting for like breaking webinars into GIFs or other screenshot images, are there tools or techniques that you find are the most beneficial and get you to that point? Because I have been struggling.
Yeah. There's probably a number of different ways that you can do it. Runway, which is a video AI tool, is really good at text to video. So if you were to upload, here's a 60-minute video and give it some prompting. From this video, I want to extract 10-minute videos, or I want to extract the key aha moments. It does a pretty good job at being able to pull those things out. And then as I mentioned before, Canva is also really starting to get into the world of video editing and creation as well. So if you've already built some of these tools using Canva, you can use some of the Canva magic tools to remix from one format to the other without having to change platforms. Wait, give her the mic. Share ideas.
You can use Animaker too, as well as Powtoons. As long as you just let them know you don't want a character in the video, they'll still do the same thing.
Great question. Awesome. And then thinking a little bit more about advocating. So really, how can we turn those promoters, who we know are promoters from our NPS comments, into AI-generated video and giving some badging? One of the more difficult things with turning internal promoters or people who are letting you know they're promoters into people who actually evangelize your product is that's an additional step. Oftentimes they feel like, well, I've already filled out the survey. I've already given you my opinion. Why do you want me to go and do additional things? And so we need to incentivize that work. And if you're able to create personalized badging or social images that they feel also promotes their own usage of the tool, sets them apart in their industry, they're more incentivized to promote your tool to others. And so you can use AI to generate that content for them. All they have to do is that one-click sharing rather than asking them to take some time to generate the content themselves. And that's where we'll spend a little bit of time talking now. So again, we want to take those NPS comments from our 9s and our 10s, our people who are promoters. We want to turn them into actual video stories that we can share in our own library with customers. People like you are finding success by X that they can share on their LinkedIn and other channels and really help spread the word about how they're being delighted by using your particular software or services. And so in this instance, we're going to upload those promoter NPS comments and other general info to a tool like Claude or Gemini and ask it to generate for us a 45-second promoter script. We want it to really get to the aha moments. We want it to surface the type of vertical or the persona that they are, and what was so impactful about how they're using your tool. You can then turn that script again into a video using a tool like 11 Labs, share that video back with the customer, and get their permission to then share that video with other customers and ask them to promote that video themselves. So all they've done is giving you an NPS. You've turned that into content. It appears to be user-generated content to others and to them, but you made it very simple and easy for them to do so. And so that looks like going from hidden NPS comments to customer success stories that really build social proof and acknowledge your power user. My video isn't showing there, but that's okay. And so what we've accomplished today is that 4x4 framework. We've taken a look at 4 steps across our customer journey. We thought about 4 different ways, or 4 different levels that you might leverage AI in order to give yourself a lift, add more hands to the pot without adding more people to the team, and have a bigger impact in 2 minutes or less with your customers. And as I promised, there are a lot more prompts that we did not get to today. See everybody's phones up. If you go to that QR code, we'll take you to a guidebook that's going to walk you through a number of prompts that you can use across a variety of AI tools. Many of the ones we talked about today, like Claude, like Gemini, like HeyGen, many other tools that we did not have a chance to get to today are included there as well. If you download that guidebook, you'll also find links in there, another guidebook that'll talk to you more about various AI tools, the cost of those tools, and what it takes to bring them on for your customer education or your marketing team. So if you're interested in getting started, you want to get started very quickly, I highly suggest you just copy and paste all of the great prompts in there to get going.